Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the NECA big, humongous, giant alien queen figure. This is actually in the 7-inch scale, so this big old figure will fit in with your other alien figures in the Marines and all that good stuff. This is not a quarter scale figure like NECA's been making. It just happens to be about that size. So I have to walk around the camera here since this guy is so big, or I guess I should say this gal is so big. I have to bring the camera really far back. So I'm going to be up front this time, and I'll give you guys some kind of measurements here, even though it's very subjective how you pose this thing. As it's standing right now, it's going to be about 15 inches tall to the top of the headpiece here, and well, I can't really do from head to tail, but if the tail is straight out, it's about 30 inches long, but with the tail curled, you have about 15 inches this way. So it's definitely going to take up some shelf space, and it's going to look really nice doing it. You guys know I'm not the biggest Alien fan. I have to choose which lines I buy figures from, and the Alien franchise just didn't make the cut, unfortunately, but this figure is super impressive. I'm perfectly happy to have this one. I would buy the little ones if I could afford to just buy everything I wanted to, but this one, I have to say, it's making me reconsider my decision-making process because they just did such a good job on it. There's like two things I have some issue with, but otherwise it's just really, really well done. I'm going to go around on the other side of the camera so that I can kind of go through the articulation, but first it comes with a few things, and right out of the package you have to first reattach these little pieces up here, whatever these things are called. You get 6 of these, 2 long ones, 2 medium ones, and then 2 small ones. So you have to put those on that side, and on the other side they're just double ball pegs, so they just pop right in, no big deal. And then you get a couple different base options. You get this long chromed rod, then you get a shorter one, and with that you get the little base that you see right there. It's just a clear acrylic base that the rod pegs into, and then on the top of that you get this piece down here which will support the figure. So you can interchange the rods to whatever height you prefer for whatever pose you have going on. I just have it on the short one because I've found that the most support comes from leaning him or her, leaning the arms on the support. That seems to be the best for the poses I've put the figure in so far, but that's going to be up to you. So you get some options with that, with the long one and the short one. And then of course you get the small jaw that goes inside the big jaw. You get an extended one and you get a short one, and those will just go right in the mouth. I'll show you that right now. Oh, these big figures are always so awkward because they're just so darn big. So anyway, in the mouth you'll see not the hole down here at the bottom, but the one above where my finger is, that little clear spot, that's where these peg into. So they're keyed so they have a shape to them, so they have to go a certain way. So you'll know which way to do when you see it. So that just pegs in like that. I have it a little crooked because I'm not looking at what I'm doing very well. But so there's the long one right there, pretty spiffy. And then the short one is pretty cool because when you put it in, you can still close the figure's mouth. So you can probably leave that little one in all the time. And there you go, it's not there. It is there. Now, one of the things I said I have to take issue with is that the little jaw in here, it's kind of recessed behind the upper row of teeth. It doesn't come out centered out of the mouth. And then the same thing with the long one. It sticks out very high, but it's a very small issue, so I wouldn't really worry about that too much. It's just something to note. And then while we're on the topic, the only other issue I really have, and it's not an issue, is that the tail is a slightly lighter color blue than the rest of the body. It's really just the highlight color. It has a lot less of the low light color built in or painted in. So that's probably going to vary from figure to figure, so it's not a huge deal, but it's something I have to bring up. Still looks fine. It's not even that noticeable once it's posed, but I do have to point out that there's an obvious color differentiation right there. So this figure also has a ton of articulation, so I'm going to try to go through all of that as best I can. We'll see, and hopefully I get it all on camera. I think I have everything pretty well lined up. So first of all, the tail is bendy. It's a bendable tail, And they did a really good job with it because it's a really stiff plastic, but they used a really stiff wire so that once you bend it, it will hold the shape. Of course, you're going to have to play around with it to get it to look the way you want it to, and the bendiness stops right about here, so you won't be able to bend the tail too much, and if you mess around with that too much, you could technically pop the wire through. I doubt it, but it's possible, so just be aware of that. But otherwise, you get the swivel where the tail connects, and then the whole thing is nice and bendable, and these vertebrae-shaped, whatever they are, I guess they're vertebrae, whatever the word is, they allow for some pretty cool posing, so that's kind of nice. I guess we'll just work our way forward from the tail then. Each of the hips, let's see if I can bring it in a little closer. You see these two out pieces that connect the leg to the body? Those actually swivel where they connect on the body itself, so they swivel there, and then hopefully you can see, I don't know if you can or not, but there's a hinge on the outside of each one of those where it connects to the leg. So the leg is hinged, and then there's another swivel there also. So it swivels on the body side and on the leg side, and it's hinged. So you should have pretty much no trouble posing the legs at all. The knee joint for the back leg is a hinge. It's a ratcheted hinge. It gives you really good range of motion. And then that'll also rotate in there. Same joint right here, right underneath it. Just reversed, we have the ratcheted hinge and the rotation. So that's pretty good. And then we have the same joint again down here in the ankle. So it's hinged and it rotates. So we have 1, 2, 3 of those in this part of the leg. We have another hinge up here plus rotation plus another rotation or swivel. And then in the toe, you can see from the bottom better, we have a hinge which allows for the toe to go up and down. And it doesn't, I don't know, maybe it doesn't go any more up than that, but it definitely can go down some. Yeah, that's about it. So it doesn't go up any higher, but it will go down. But you get the ankle rocker built into the toe. I know it's just the toe, but it is sufficient to make the pose look good. So the legs are pretty well articulated. We'll get to the paint after I go through the articulation, by the way. So then in this torso joint right here, we have a double ball peg. Mine's a little loose, but I think that's just because I've heated it up recently to make sure everything was moving freely and it hasn't quite taken back its tight shape. But we have a double ball peg in here. Doesn't have the greatest range of motion just due to the sculpt, but that will allow you to move the torso around up and down, get some rotation out of it. So there's that. And we already covered these. These all have a double ball peg on them, so you can move them around to get them out of the way or into a cool pose. The shoulders are just like the legs or the hips, in that we have the swivel built into where it connects to the body. Then we have a hinge and a swivel on top of that. And then for the elbow part, we have another hinge, a ratcheted hinge, and that will swivel. And then for the wrists, we have a swivel where the hand connects, and that's also hinged. No articulation in the fingers, just in the wrists. And then for the little arms here coming off of her chest, we have a swivel where they connect, and we have a hinge. And then for the elbow, we have a swivel and a hinge again. And then for the wrists, we have a swivel and a hinge. So really, they packed in as much articulation as they probably could. Fingers are a little bit skinny to get any articulation in there. I guess they could have been bendable, but that would have just been too expensive probably. For the neck, we have a double ball peg, so the neck can move around. I'll just set that aside. I pulled one of those out a second ago. Okay, I'll just explain that now before we get to the neck. So these guys, you can see here, double ball peg, if it'll focus. Double ball peg. And when you're putting them in, you can either put them in all the way, which makes them sit really flush and they look nice, but they don't have quite as much posability. Or you can just stick them in about halfway like that. Hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. And that will allow you to move them around a whole lot more. You just have the chance of them popping out. So that's really up to you. If you want to push them in all the way, you might want to hit it with a hairdryer just to soften it up. But if you do, they'll look really nice. They just won't have quite as much posability. Okay, so back to the neck. Double ball peg right here. This one for me, I had to hit with a hairdryer. Same thing for the upper neck, just to make sure that it would move nicely. The plastic feels hard, but it's a really nice plastic. It'll soften up really well with the hairdryer, so don't be afraid to use that. Don't just break anything off. Warm it up first. So double ball peg for the neck. You can move side to side, up and down, rotation. And I'm not forcing it right now, but you can actually get a pretty good range of motion out of this thing. You're just going to have to kind of push the two parts against each other a little bit. And then for the upper neck, You can see the head is sculpted to the shape of the neck, but it's another double ball peg. We'll talk about that top part in a second. So you can bring the head down, you can bring it up. The only thing that really limits it is the back of the headpiece here, hitting back here. But it's got really good range of motion, it rotates. You can really get some decent posing out of it with no trouble at all. And then for the head, we have another double ball peg where the head connects to the neck, and that just lets it move all the way around, side to side, up and down. Pretty much any way you want to pose it, you can. And then the jaw is hinged. This is really cool because the tendons here tuck inside the head, so they look good closed or open. Looks really nice. It's made out of translucent plastic, so we get all that nice detail in there. And then lastly, for the articulation is the head. It's on a slide, so you can take this shield part and slide it all the way forward and slide it all the way back. So that pretty much wraps up all of what I have to talk about other than the paint. So let's talk about that. The paint, he's got a she. I keep calling it a he, but it's not a he, it's a she. Lots of blues and grays and blacks shaded throughout with some really nice gold peeking around on the tips of the spines here at the base of these things. Just kind of spattered's not really the right word, just placed about. Looks really cool on the neck, if you see that in there. Looks really nice. It's kind of like a bronzy gold. Adds a whole lot to the figure. And then the translucent parts that I mentioned look really good. It has a real nice kind of glossy sheen to the whole thing to give it that Xenomorph slime Caro syrup look. So that's really cool. And then just the sculpt, they have so much detail in there. You can see in the neck, but just things like on the thighs, you can see these hollow pieces in here on the side. Lots of detail. Really well done figure. Like I mentioned before, I'm not a huge Alien fan, but this figure is has really impressed me and is really impressive. So it might even end up making its way onto my top 10 list for the year. I'm not quite sure about that yet, but we will see as the year winds up. So that'll do it for the review, guys. Stick around. I'll post a couple photos at the end so you can see that. But I would definitely recommend this figure. There's also some silver on the hands I didn't mention. You'll see that in the photos. So I definitely recommend this figure, especially if you're an Alien fan. Really nice job from NECA. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.